Welcome to DEAI Insights and Best Practices, presented by Grambling University's Adrian Weber and Springer Nature's Bernadette Bino and Marilyn Hendricks. As our sectors seek to improve diversity and inclusion across the entire academic ecosystem, this session aims to identify positive steps taken by the speakers to share best practice with the audience to bring back to their institutions. Our speakers today come from varying backgrounds and serve in different capacities within the world of scholarly communications, ranging from peer reviewed publishing and library science. Adrian C. Weber, Grambling State University's first dean of the Digital Library and Learning Commons, brings a plethora of academic library experience spanning over 27 years in library management. She has worked in small and large libraries, as well as private and public higher education institutions, including the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, South Carolina State University, Xavier University, Alabama A&M University, and Texas College. Currently, she serves as the president of the board of the Historically Black College and University Library Alliance. Ms. Weber's vision is to position the library as a student and researcher centered institutional asset that promotes lifelong learning via traditional and non traditional methods. Bernadette Bino Mack, a graduate of Clark Atlanta University, is an account manager in institutional sales college market and has worked at Springer Nature for the past 13 years. Starting in advertising commercial operations, she moved to the institutional sales division in 2020. Currently, Bernadette serves as the global co-chair of the Black Employee Network, former network employee representative on Springer Nature's Global DEI Council, and advising member to the HBCU Working Group. Marilyn N. McDonald Hendricks, known as Mimi, is an executive licensing manager at Springer Nature. In the past 16 years at SN, she has covered institutional sales in the Latin America and Caribbean regions and now manages a college market sales team of 4 covering the Western U.S. She is the sponsor of the Springer Nature Black Employee Network, co-chair of the Global Black Researcher Task Force, chartering president of the Springer Nature Toastmasters, and member of the steering committee for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals.
Thank you for joining us today. As we examine DEAI insights and best practices, it is important for us to discuss and dive into how we got here as an employee network. In this session, we will first take a look at Springer Nature Black Employee Network tactics, then explore the collaborative efforts of the Black Employee Network and Springer Nature's goal to drive change from the inside out, and proceed into a conversation on next steps, HBCU library, and VPR relations. The Springer Nature Black Employee Network aims to bring about visibility, opportunity, and parity for its members globally. The network cultivates professional relationships amongst Black employees while assisting with the development of initiatives to create a sustainable pipeline of Black talent within all facets of Springer Nature business. Our vision is to collaborate with our global DEI team on activities that fall within the Springer Nature DEI strategy, focusing on its impact of our Black employees. Our mission is to create a pipeline for HBCUs and Black professional organizations to join the SN family in various capacities, whether it is through employment, accessibility to advisory boards and think tanks, opportunities for external collaboration, or contributions of content through publishing research. The speaker series, Conversations with Black Leaders in STEM, was an initiative that assisted in highlighting Black innovators and leaders that discuss career paths, mentorship, and diversity. These prominent conversations have assisted in the exposure of leaders within our global science communities, aiding in the transparency of the various inequities the science communities face. As we explore the relationships with HBCUs, a key part of our vision, we begin the work with others externally and internally to develop various opportunities for education and career advancement. Annual invitations to our HBCU-sponsored masterclass, a collaborative departmental effort, exposes our HBCU researcher and faculty member to our world-renowned editors, the information on how to publish, and a one-on-one experience of an abstract review. This amazing opportunity provides insight to those in search of guidelines in drafting competitive manuscripts. In other collaborative efforts, the newly formed Transformative Agreement with Lyricists has allowed HBCUs the access to read and publish, a much-needed tool to further the push to R1 and R2 status. As we continue to reach towards the Black researchers in academia, we also find the importance of speaking with our high school students to educate and encourage them on the endless possibilities of higher education, publishing, research, and science careers. SMBN has made significant contributions to our diversity, inclusion, and inequity global strategy and stand firm on its principles and values. These efforts have been great steps to fulfilling our mission of amplifying a sustainable pipeline in scientific publishing and research for the global Black community.
I will now provide highlights of internal, interdepartmental, and external teamwork under the banner of SNBN's program streams: State of the Black Employee, Black Table Talk, and Pay It Forward, all of which have contributed in some form to winning DEI awards and providing content to corporate communications, various social media platforms. Under the State of Black Employee, SNBN launched chapters in New York, London, and Sao Paulo. We collaborated with human resources to produce online and in-person sessions with BB STEM, STEM Noir in the United Kingdom. We also provided input that was included in the creation of the Nature News internship. Under Black Table Talk, SNBN co-produced with Scientific American sponsorship the network's official launch and signature Jubilee. During the 2022 Jubilee, a panel of participants from the speaker series discussed diversity in STEM. One of the participants was Dr. Antonio Baines, a pancreatic cancer researcher from the HBCU North Carolina Central University. He also participated in this year's in-person Charleston session titled, "How Genuinely Transformative Are Transformative Agreements?" as well as has recruited participants to both HBCU Nature Masterclasses. Under Pay It Forward, SNBN is committed to reaching an equitable era of open science. On the road to open science, publishers and related stakeholders are traveling the stretch of open access and transformative agreements where the scholarly communications and curriculum support goals of the researcher, professor, and librarian merge and converge. In 2023, a survey titled Insights into Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in the Global Researcher Community was published by a team led by Soumya Swaminathan, chair of the Springer Nature Research DEI program. Of the almost 5,000 participants identified as the following: 31% as professors, 63% in higher education, 55% male, 36% female, 23% considered themselves to belong to an underrepresented ethnic or racial group. 61% of those respondents identifying under the underrepresented ethnic and racial group experienced people acting as if one were less competent, trustworthy, or capable of others at least once a year. Based on the responses of all respondents, Publishers have an important role to play in improving DEI by developing and communicating inclusive publishing practices by targeting underrepresented groups, tackling bias in peer review, publishing a diverse range of voices, and supporting more authors to choose open access. On behalf of the Springer Nature DEI survey team, I encourage you to read, share, and discuss with your colleagues within and beyond the library, especially with vice presidents of research, VPRs. Set up working groups to analyze your institution's research and teaching landscapes with the goal of crafting solutions to address any DEAI barriers. SN Ben and our colleagues at Springer Nature are committed to understanding and reducing the structural barriers to equality in the research and education communities we work with. The following are examples of being part of the progress and addressing challenges mentioned in the survey. SN Ben collaborated with strategic partnerships to produce 2 HBCU Nature Master Classes where the network recruited the participants and strategic partnerships secured sponsorship from the Breast Cancer Research Foundation. We appointed a network member to participate on Springer Nature's editorial advisory group on company policies and guidelines related to potentially harmful content related to racism, sex, sexuality, and gender. SN Ben is currently partnering with the editorial teams responsible for books and journals and expanding the scope of the HBCU working group to the Global Black Researcher Task Force. The HBCU engagement will continue to be a dedicated initiative. SN Ben Brazil's chapter lead, Andrea Gonzalez, connected the Sao Paulo editorial office with the Brazilian Association of Black Researchers to produce author workshops for books and journals with editor Bruno Fiuza. I will conclude with a foundational example of driving change from the inside out related to the road to open science and R1 classification, where my co-presenters and I not only cooperated with each other, but also with our respective colleagues, other HBCU library deans, and lyricists, one of our consortium partners. After attending the 2023 National HBCU Week, sponsored by the White House Initiative on HBCUs, Bernadette, Courtney Little, and I committed to the common goal of maximizing the inclusion of the HBCUs and transformative agreements with the appropriate consortia, starting with lyricist membership. This led to securing data from the open access team to support proposals with the approval of the Vice President of the Americas, Institutional Sales, Maria Lopez, and lyricists. The concept was shared with HBCU's library deans, including our presenter, Adrian Weber, who then encouraged other HBCUs to be an audience to pitch the institution's respective proposal, of which some were prepared to make the transition to a read and publish agreement based on discussions with vice presidents of research. This became a pivotal moment in the development of this deal. And because of this, I would like to invite Adrian to discuss how this particular agreement assisted in the engagement of HBCUs and publishers.
Thank you. Well, I tell you, this was something that was a surprise and welcomed. You know, it's not often that we get a chance to have that seat at the table where we can talk about a read and publish opportunity in such a transformative agreement. A lot of times the library is left out. We hear about these things that's going on. Decisions are made across campus, decisions are made at another table, and then we get to hear about the read opportunities. But we don't get a chance to have the published side. So when Springer Nature and the Black Employee Network decided that this was something to bring the HBCU libraries to the table to hear what's going on, and for someone to have just the notion that this was important enough for our institutions to participate in something with such dynamic impact, not only for our faculty and staff, but also for our students to have opportunities to talk about the research that's going on. There are agencies so far this year that have funded over 207 opportunities of research. What happens to that information? Somebody has to write about it at some point. Where is it going to go? It can't fall on deaf ears. Somebody needs to know what's happening at our institutions throughout the country. We're talking about 100 institutions that's doing research, no matter what size that institution is. Somebody has to have that information. Our institutions are great repositories of information. And to have the opportunity for our faculty members to be able to write this and publish this information is just amazing. When I spoke with my vice president for research and I told him about this opportunity, he thought it was fantastic. When I talked to some of the department chairs and the vice presidents for arts and sciences, and I talked to the chair for the science department, and then some of the researchers, they were just amazed that I was speaking with a publishing company that thought that Grambling, dear old Grambling, would have the opportunity to be able to come to the table and take advantage of something like this. And I said, but it's not just about Grambling, it's also about your colleagues at other institutions, those that you partner with, that will come to the table also. And I started talking about, okay, so they're talking to Southern, they're talking to Fisk, they're talking to other institutions, and they're like, oh, well, we're partnering with them. And I said, well, I need to know who's doing research in cancer. I need to know who's doing research in this. And they were like, oh, we're doing this. And we have some environmental things that we're working on. And that aha moment to know that here's an opportunity that we can share what we're doing through an agreement that we just thought we were only going to read about somebody else's research. And now we're getting the opportunity to share what we're doing through an agreement that's being made because somebody's sitting back going, wow, there are researchers at our HBCUs that's turning out excellent work. They're being funded at rates that's unimaginable, and nobody's telling that story. Well, now the story's going to be told, and the opportunities are there. And here's a publisher that's saying, we want to know what you have, bring it to us, and the possibilities are great from here. So now we start talking about writing for research opportunities to be published. That aha moment becomes a glorified aha moment with this big blaze behind them that says, I can do it. And it helps them go further in their endeavors. I could talk about this all the time, but this is just, this inside out approach, this just elevates everything that they can do. So as you see, I just kind of get excited about this. But my colleagues that I've spoken with, when we started talking about this, and Mimi said, well, can you reach out to some of your colleagues? Absolutely. Because some of these institutions were institutions that did not get that aha moment, but they needed to hear me say something and say, okay, come on, this is an opportunity. Who do I need to talk to? Because we were in a safe space. Mm-hmm. And here's that opportunity.
I do have a question. You mentioned leveling the playing field, which we definitely think is important. Um, what else can groups like network groups like ourselves, as well as publishers, do to assist in that outside of the transformative agreement? How do you think we can continue to build these relationships and bring our researchers to a different level?
Continue to afford them the opportunities to to be able to do this. Talk to them, because sometimes they have ideas. Reach out to the librarians and have the librarians to set up think tanks for you. It may be regional, uh, statewide opportunities that happen with the HBCUs, that we can have uh, opportunities to meet. It could be with the alliance when we all meet, could be a day or so where just the researchers come in to talk about what the needs are, what could be done to make this happen. It could be, there's so many other opportunities that could happen. But also, sometimes, it's going to regional accrediting meetings, such as SACS or Middle East, and having that meeting with presidents and provosts to say, here's what we're doing. And, with some of the HBCUs, and we want to broaden that reach because we understand the difficulties that your institutions may have. And so we can only do what we are allowed to do. We're working with your librarians, but we'd also like to expand that reach to make sure that your researchers have these opportunities. And we're working with your vice presidents of research, or we want to be able to work with them to get the greatest impact for your institutions, but we need your support as well. Because I think that when everybody understands that we're working for the greater good of the institution and not the greater good of one entity. It's not about the library. It's not about that science department. It's not about the research department, but it's for the greater good of the institution. But what makes up the institution is all of these areas that I just spoke about. You can't have an institution. Now, this is where I get selfish. You can't have an academic institution without having a library. At no point can you have a viable institution without having a library and a librarian who understands the totality of what the institution is supposed to do. And so there's that research component in there. There's that read component in there. There's that publishing component in there. And you have to bring all of that together. And everybody on the campus plays a role in that whole piece. So the common denominator for that is the library. Because then we have to work out, how do we disseminate the information when all of these pieces get together? And so we do that through our electronic resources. And so at Grambling State University, we have the first and only digital-born library among HBCUs. So for us, it becomes an easy fix because we are birthing something new. So it becomes very easy.
So we're birthing something new, because I think all of us feel in various parts of our lives, professional or personal, that change is in the air. Even just the time of the year that we're in right now, we're heading into 2024. How do you see editors from the various publishers developing relationships with the HBCUs and providing some kind of not necessarily reality checks, but giving a sense of things don't happen overnight, but how basically relationships evolve, having worked in other countries and realizing how you have to get people used to seeing you and the trust, because you talked about our reaching out to you and reaching out then to a larger group, but it's still a smaller group. How do you get that effect where it has the ripples to the rest of the HBCUs with realistic expectations of how that relationship evolves?
I think that we have to build a trust factor in. You have to have trust first in someone within the entity, and then you have to then work together and believe that the entity is going to do right. And then you come up with an agreement that is going to show that there's going to be good and right that both parties benefit from. Springer Nature started this, and they're going to want to know, how do we get engaged with this?
Oh, people sometimes ask for our special sauce.
Well, they may ask, but it's one of those things where you say membership has its privileges. You have to come forward with, what do you bring to the table? Don't bring an empty table.
Right.
You know what the formula is, and knowing what the formula looks like and the opportunities that come along with it. I think our institutions have been forgotten for so long. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be able to have this seat at the table, because it's one thing to be at the table, but be a silent voice at the table.
Mm-hmm.
It's another thing to be at the table and have a voice that's being heard and considered when you bring value to that table.
As the conversation continues, so will our journey to more diverse, inclusive, and equitable institutions of publishing and research. We will now begin our live question and answer portion of the session. Please place questions in the chat or use the raise your hand tool to be acknowledged.